This here is my 2025 homemade camper. That's what it says on the title. This DIY camper, specifically, it's a foamie camper. I built back in February in only 12 days. I mean, that sounds overly ambitious and crazy, and it's because it was, and I am. I've been wanting to do a build like this for quite a while now. I first heard about a foamie DIY camper from someone I had met a couple years back when they had shown me their foamie camper for their truck bed. That got me interested in it. I looked into them, researched them, and decided one day I'm gonna build one of these. And the thing is, I couldn't really justify spending money on this type of build for the longest while when we already had tents for camping that were good enough. And I'm even able to sleep in the Jeep, as you guys have seen in my recent trip to Moab. But what really kicked it off was my wife and I, we were looking to go on a road trip in February out to Utah and Arizona. And I figured, yeah, we'll be good with hotels and Airbnbs like we have been in the past. We're no strangers to that, especially Airbnbs. We've used Airbnbs for cheap stays for years and years, but for some reason, this one particular week in February that we were looking to head out, in total, the pricing was looking around like 1,500 to $2,000 for 7 nights, which I guess, I don't know, I guess it's reasonable, but there was no way I was going to be spending that kind of money on a trip when, in the back of my mind, I knew that $2,000, instead of spending that on hotels that I can't keep, they don't come with me, instead spending $2,000 on something that I get to keep in the end and that will last us for years and years to come as we take it on so many trips. So yeah, I kind of decided in the moment, well, I can't justify spending $2,000 on hotels and watch that money just fly away. Guess I'm gonna be building myself a camper. And granted, one is a more convenient option, while the other not so convenient in the beginning, but I think I made the right call in the end. And now, for those of you that don't know, a foamie camper is actually, let me get an example here, is a camper built out of foam board insulation. These walls here and this roof, all built out of 1.5-inch foam board insulation. This makes it a very lightweight build. I haven't officially weighed it yet, but I'm pretty certain from calculations that I've already done, this thing weighs under 450 pounds, which is perfect for the Jeep to tow it. As well as it being built out of straight up insulation, keeps it nice and insulated in there, especially when you're camping in the winter. We had a diesel heater cranking into this, and it got too hot on the heater's lowest setting. And when we turned the heat off, this thing retained heat for quite a while. And now usually foamie campers are sealed on the exterior with poor man's fiberglass, or PMF for short. PMF is a mixture of canvas drop cloth and Titebond wood glue. You put the Titebond wood glue on the foam surface, your canvas lays on top, you smush it in, and then just some more wood glue on top of it. PMF, or once again, poor man's fiberglass, was originally a DIY fix for patching holes in things like canoes and kayaks. It has proven itself to be a waterproof and durable application, which makes it perfect for the exterior of a DIY camper. This thing is waterproof, very solid, and you can paint it. So it works out very well. Now, I had three goals for this camper build. The first is that this camper had to be lightweight because the Jeep doesn't really have that great of a towing capacity. So the lighter, the better. The trailer itself, I believe, weighs 200 pounds, maybe a little more, or maybe even a little less. I don't remember, but all I do know is, as I mentioned previously, this thing comes under 450 pounds. That's not an issue at all for the Jeep to tow. And I'll tell you, it tows it great. The second thing was that it had to be cheap. Not cheaply made, but I had a budget of $2,000. If I was going to spend $2,000 on hotels, I wanted this to be $2,000 in total, not including accessories like a diesel heater or a power bank. Those make it go over, but for the build itself, I got around $2,000, and that was my second goal. The third goal is that it had to be comfortable inside. First, it was able to retain heat, and that worked out perfectly for our winter camping trip. But second, I've never been able to get entirely comfortable sleeping on an air mattress in a tent. It just never really worked for me. So having a memory foam mattress in an enclosed space, that to me was the ultimate camping upgrade, and I needed it to be comfortable. Spoiler, it is. So when I finally decided back in late January that I'm not spending this money on hotels, I am building this camper, I had to make it official, and I had to do something that was basically going to be my point of no return. So on a Friday night, about a half hour before Harbor Freight closed, I headed on over there and picked myself up a 1,720 pound rated 4x8 kit trailer. It came in two boxes. One box had the frame in pieces, the axle, and all the nuts and bolts to put it together. The other box actually had a set of these, I believe these are 12-inch rims, these tires. Hint, hint, they're only rated for 45 miles per hour, so don't have them on. And since the tires that came with this kit trailer were only rated for 45 miles an hour, I did later on in the build, when I noticed that, I did go ahead and go back to Harbor Freight because they do sell tire and rim combos for trailers right there that actually are rated for highway use. These Carlstar trailer tires are actually rated for 85 miles per hour on the highway, and they are a little bit bigger than the tires this came with. I believe they're in total 23 inches in height on 13-inch rims. That might be the case. But yeah, it gave the trailer a nice bit of a lift, and actually now how it stands, it sits perfectly flush with the top of the Jeep. It looks great. And also in that box had the lighting and wiring and other odds and ends. All that for about $580. They signed over the certificate of origin in my name, which I later found out is a very important document that you should keep track of and know where it is when you're getting ready to get plates for your kit trailer. Yeah. And after that was all said and done, headed on home, and that was it. That was the start. I pulled into the garage, took the boxes out of the Jeep, and laid everything all out on the floor here to start putting together the next day, which was Saturday. And that, it was straightforward. The instructions for the kit trailer were actually very self-explanatory. It was a lot of work, a lot of tightening and untightening to get that frame square. I struggled quite a bit, but eventually was able to get it tightened down and together perfectly where it was fully square from corner to corner without any issue. And with the amount of time I spent putting the trailer together, it kind of hit me. I only have 12 days to finish this, to make it roadworthy, to make it something that we can sleep in and camp out of. And I was confident, honestly. I was confident that I could get it done, because the one thing that I know about me, when I have a deadline that's coming up for a big project, it consumes my life. It becomes everything I do for every minute, every second, and every hour of the day. And that's kind of what happened here. I finished it in 12 days. I spent a minimum of 10 hours a day. And in total, I put together about 140 man hours over the course of 12 days to get it like this. I gotta say, I'm very proud of how it came out. But I digress. I got the trailer all set up. And now that I had a trailer that could haul stuff, I hooked it up to the Jeep, checked all the lights were working, and they were, and went right over to the Home Depot to start getting my materials to build the camper, which it's kind of funny to me. The trailer that was used to haul the materials ends up becoming the camper made out of said materials. Anyways, and now regarding all those materials that I picked up to build my camper, let's go over that. The first thing that I picked up, which was pretty important, I say one of the most important parts of this because it's kind of structural, really. You don't see it, it's tucked under the PMF here, but there are two, I think they're 2332 thickness, two 4x8 boards of ground contact rated plywood. And I went with the ground contact rated plywood because underneath the plywood is exposed. I do plan on doing something other there, whether it's fluid film. I don't know if that's an entirely good idea. I don't know if the wood would absorb it, but anyways, or some other way to weatherproof the underside. But even if that is weatherproofed, this is a camper that will be and has been exposed to the elements, mud, dirt, snow, and rain. So I figured the floor of this camper, where everything kind of resides and is attached to it, should be something that wasn't going to easily rot or deteriorate. So I purchased two 4x8 ground contact plywood sheets. Those ran about $50 each. And in my mind, money well spent. And with sets of nuts and bolts that were long enough to go through both sheets of plywood as well as the frame, I first mounted the first sheet with what I'll consider anchor bolts to a few points on the trailer. After that was done, I was then ready to put the second sheet on top of that, and then went ahead, drilled around the edge of the frame and on the cross members as well, mounting the plywood as I went along with the nuts, bolts, and lock washers that I got. I decided it was very important to make sure that that plywood flooring was really, really secured to the trailer frame, because once again, everything else is built on top of that floor. And yes, that floor is attached to the trailer frame, but if it isn't attached well enough, with something being hit with wind on the highway, you could see where I'm going. The whole thing goes flying. So I didn't need that happening, didn't want that happening. I think I probably have at least 20 to 30 different sets of nuts and bolts clamping this floor to the trailer. It ain't going anywhere. Now, the next thing that I had to do after getting the trailer put together and getting the floor mounted on, which really was such a great feeling because it started feeling like, okay, this is happening. This is coming together. The next thing was the walls. And I started with both the passenger side and the driver side walls first. Now, when you buy the foam insulation boards, they are 4 foot by 8 foot. This is more than 4 feet in all the orange that you see because it's covering the flooring, and there's also another foam board sitting on top of there. But I started with the walls here and thought to myself, well, it's not going to be a square. That's not very aerodynamic. And I am no engineer regarding that. But I have seen enough campers and enough trailers to know there needs to be something maybe, to get the wind blowing over it so this doesn't just become a sail behind my Jeep, killing my gas mileage. And also, I do know a little bit. Having the wind hit here keeps it mounted to the ground, which is nice, especially for a lightweight trailer. You want, when you're hitting 65, 70 on the highway, you want these tires to be planted, and having that air hit in the front here, that'll do just that. It keeps this planted on the tongue and keeps the trailer tires planted down as well, all that downforce. I watch enough NASCAR to know a little bit, but anyways, I didn't know exactly what to do, so I basically just chose a point somewhere and said, all right, here I want a 30-degree angled cut. And that's what I did. I did that for both the passenger side and the driver's side. And once they were cut, I was ready to mount them onto the floor. Now, you're probably wondering, how do you mount the foam to the plywood? Well, you would do so with about 5 to 6 tubes of Loctite PL 3X. Now, it's very important that when you're shopping for these materials, you only get Loctite PL 3X. Don't get the 8X or the PL Max because it's a stronger adhesive. The reason that you want to go with Loctite PL 3X is because the formula that this Loctite is made out of doesn't burn your foam board when it's curing. The other ones will. And I almost made this mistake because I thought, hey, why don't I just get a stronger Loctite adhesive? That'll be better, right? Nope, it will ruin your project and everything will just be a mess. Nothing will have adhered and your walls will have fallen off, actually. So get the Loctite PL 3X. Make sure it's only this one, as it is specifically made not just for general construction materials, but also for foam board insulation. Now with the Loctite, there's a couple of ways you can do it. One I think better than the other. The first is simply take your Loctite and just in a nice zigzag pattern, put it all on the bottom of your foam board, all the way down. And when you've done it on the entire length of your wall, you're going to take it, get it pressed down to your plywood floor, get it clamped down as best as you can. I personally just held it there myself for a good 20 minutes until I figured it was good and would hold. And that's that, pretty much. Sounds a little crazy, and it does sound crazy to me as well. Instead of just doing a zigzag pattern on here, there is more that you can do, and I actually found this on a forum. There are foamy forums out there. What you do is just drill a hole every 6 inches down the entire length of the bottom of the foam board. And now when you go to do your zigzag pattern, at each hole, stop and fill it up all the way until it starts seeping out. Because now what you'll have done, when you press your foam board down to the plywood, not only will you have a bond between the two surfaces, the plywood and the bottom of the foam board, you'll also have that Loctite curing up within the foam board as well, creating, I know this is another brand name, a liquid nail, for instance, which will create a stronger bond, a stronger hold of your wall down to that plywood. I picked up about 6 tubes of this and I used 5, as you can see right here. But this stuff, use it on everything, every surface where your foam is attached to any other surface, including the other foam itself. I also do have cross braces that are 2x4s. One here, one here, and actually one here as well. And those are all also secured into the foam in notches that I cut out and whatnot with the Loctite PL. And another thing that I had to pick up while I was at the Home Depot, besides the plywood, the foam board insulation, the Loctite, and all the nuts and bolts to secure the floor to the trailer, was quite a bit of 2x4s. Actually, I believe I picked up 4 10-foot 2x4s. Because in my mind, as I just explained to you guys how the foam is expected to be mounted and secured, that didn't exactly sit entirely well with me. A lot of examples of foamy campers I have seen of this kind were exactly just that, with no other apparent structure to it besides 2x4 cross braces from this wall to that wall across the top. That's fine and all, but I still wanted a little more security of having the walls actually clamped down and secured not just to the floor, but to the trailer. So what I thought of was to create 2 structural support braces out of 2x4s that are first bolted to the trailer frame, go up the side of the wall. The wall itself is glued to this 2x4 with the Loctite PL. Then from the top, there's another 2x4 that cuts all the way across and is secure with multiple wood screws to this 2x4. So now it goes up and over and then goes down the other side of the camper, bolted to the other side of the trailer. With these 2 structural support brackets that I've installed on here, it made me a lot more confident in the high winds that we actually do experience out here out in Colorado. And I wasn't exactly expecting to have that tested out so soon, but when we were out in Arizona, I believe on day 4 of our trip, a good 800 miles into it already, we hit some nasty like 70-mile-per-hour crosswinds. And the Jeep, the trailer, everything was taking a beating, but this thing barely moved. It was not fishtailing at all. It stayed straight. It felt supported. And I simply wasn't worried that it was just gonna fly off the trailer frame. As much as people have been successful with just gluing it to the floor, I like my support bracket idea just a little bit better. Now, after you get all the walls installed, the roof installed, and any support braces that you plan on installing, before we move on to the last step of applying the poor man's fiberglass, what you should do is pick up a few cans of great stuff expanding insulation foam. You're going to need to use this for all of the seams where the foam comes in contact with other pieces of foam, as well as any support braces that you have. This is important because there will be gaps, even ever so slightly, in between the foam boards where they meet and where the foam board meets the wood supports and even the trailer. So once you get all those gaps filled in, the foam is going to foam up a lot. You're going to have to get that cut down both with a knife and in the following steps to come regarding prepping for the PMF, which involves sanding down. And now we have the 2x4s, the plywood, all of that. The last thing that I had to purchase was the materials for the exterior, the poor man's fiberglass. One of, if not the most important part of a DIY camper, of a foamie camper, because if you can't take this thing out into the elements with a weatherproofed, waterproof exterior, you're not going to be able to use your camper. So the materials for PMF are actually fairly simple. As I explained, it's just canvas drop cloth and wood glue. What I did, I purchased, I believe, 5 or 6 4-foot by 15-foot canvas drop cloths, 9-ounce thickness ones specifically, and then 3 gallons of Tight Bond 3. I didn't know I was going to use all 3 gallons, but I sure did. I used a lot more than I expected. Now, in order to apply the poor man's fiberglass to our foam insulation board, to our walls and our roof, I had to do some prep work. Foam insulation board, as I'll pull this out again here, comes with this shiny film, this shiny finish on the outside of it. And the wood glue simply just doesn't adhere well at all to this slick surface. So in order to prepare your camper, once the walls and the roof, everything's all done with your foam, you have to sand it down. I used a combination of an orbital sander as well as just sanding it by hand. And that was a tedious process. It made a lot of pink dust all over the garage, all over me. But it's a necessary step, a very necessary step before applying PMF to your foam board. And then after I was done with prepping my foam board, it was pretty much time at that point to start the poor man's fiberglass application. And it's straightforward, it really is. It's just very time consuming, very messy, and a little stressful for sure. I started out by first doing rough measurements of all my sides and edges that I needed to do. And then got the canvas cloth out, measured, cut what I decided needed to be cut, kind of decided where my seams were going to be. As you can tell, I do not have perfect seams. I kind of tried. I did try, but this being my first time doing poor man's fiberglass, doing anything like this, it came out how it came out. You see this crease here is because there's an uneven piece of canvas underneath there. I actually do like this seam a lot. I hate this seam because it's just way too jagged, but I digress. In order to start the application, you first have to get your Tight Bond wood glue and start applying it directly to the surface that you're looking to put the drop cloth onto. Once you have that whole surface fully covered, you then apply your drop cloth on top and then smooth it out, squeegee it onto it, make sure that it's nice and tight and perfectly flat on that surface that you're applying it to. And that's very important. You want it to be perfectly flat and you want there to be enough glue underneath it, because the worst thing you can have, which I have a few on the back door, but nothing too egregious. The worst thing you could have is air bubbles that will end up forming underneath your PMF, which, as you could imagine, compromises the water resistance of that area just a bit if water were to somehow get behind it. Once you have it all squeegeed and flattened out on that surface, then you get your wood glue again and put it over that drop cloth, that canvas that you just applied. You want to be very liberal with the amount of wood glue that you apply, because it's the combination of a lot of wood glue soaked into the canvas that gives it the waterproof, water resistant properties that poor man's fiberglass does have. And once I finished with one panel, it kind of set the tone for the whole rest of the camper. I went bit by bit, piece by piece, and just made my way all around. It took me roughly 2 full days, maybe 3, to get the whole camper fully covered in poor man's fiberglass. And a good thing about PMF that I learned, it dries very quick, and not too quick that you can't work with it, but quick enough where once you're done, you definitely can paint on it within 12 hours and safely by the next day. But it doesn't have a very long curing process at all from what I noticed and from how I worked on it. I was able to get painting right away. And that's one thing I didn't mention, right? I didn't pick up any paint from the Home Depot. And well, that's because since I wanted to stay within my $2,000 budget, I decided I already had latex exterior paint for my house in my garage. And I decided if I want to stay within budget, why not use that paint? So this orange is actually the color of our front door, and this white is the color of the exterior trim. And I do got to say, I actually am really happy that I went with this idea. Not only did it save money on paint and use paint that was just sitting in the corner, probably never going to be used again, but also it kind of ties the camper to our house, and it makes me feel like we have a little piece of home when we're out camping. And I like that. And also I like the color. I know some people I know have said they hate it, but to each their own. To me, this is orange and cream, and I love that, so whatever. The other thing about the latex exterior paint is I wasn't entirely sure how it was going to hold up on this type of application. It's meant for a house. It's not meant for going 70 miles per hour on the highway. So I wasn't entirely sure how it was going to hold up, but what you see right here is 2,000 miles of this paint being on the highway, experiencing snow and rain and rocks and mud being flung up on it. I washed it and I see no issues with this paint peeling, chipping, or anything. It has held up extremely well, far exceeded my expectations. Once again, this is latex exterior house paint, self-priming kinds. So keep that in mind. And one uncertainty that I had when I was building the camper was how to mount the window. I purchased this RV window, this RV replacement window off of Amazon for, I believe, $70 or $80. And I assumed it came with some sort of mounting hardware that I would be able to secure the window and then on the inside clamp it to the wall. And that was not the case. It came with no sort of mounting bracket at all, like I assumed, and that's on me. I know there are other RV windows that you can purchase that come with that outer shell, which includes the glass, and then the inner shell that clamps and you screw it all together. This didn't come with that. So I had to deal with this with only about 3 days left to spare before we were about to hit the road. And I came up with a plan. I was going to look for some sort of material in my garage that I would be able to use as a clamp on the inside and drill metal self-tapping screws through into the frame of the window. And that's exactly what I did. I actually had 1/2-inch square steel tubing. I think I have an example of it. So what I did on the inside, and I can show you that when I show you guys the inside, is I took these two pieces, mounted them to the wall inside like this, and used self-tapping screws through it to hit into the window frame. In doing so, I was able to successfully clamp the window to the foam wall using these as the inside bracket, because you can't screw into foam. It's not going to hold. And this worked very well, actually, better than I expected. And yeah, it worked great. And a couple more things to point out before we take a look on the inside of this camper here is first off, I needed storage on the tongue, because I was bringing a diesel heater with me, 5 gallons of diesel, and some other odds and ends. I didn't want to put them in the camper, and I didn't want to leave it in the Jeep, especially, God forbid, I spilled some diesel. That would just be a nightmare. So what I decided to do, I actually built my own tongue storage platform here, which is all bolted. It's 2x4s cut angled perfectly flush with the tongue, and I bolted each 2x4 right to the tongue, and it's on there very good. And now I know they make steel or metal purpose-built tongue boxes, but I was trying to stay within budget for this. I'll upgrade this in the future, but for those of you who don't know, this is simply just a Home Depot garage storage bin. And I have this screwed with probably 20 screws to that platform, and it's still on there. It moves ever so slightly, but that's actually just it flexing itself. This lasted for 2,000 miles, holding 5 gallons of diesel and a diesel heater and a jack and some other stuff. And if it works, I suppose, right? I also made sure to have a ratchet strap to keep it secured to the tongue as well, clamped down. And on top, while we were driving out there, also had the spare tire mounted here, also strapped down. It all held together very well. I'm very happy how it worked out, and I'll upgrade it in the future, but for now, it still works for me. The last thing that I did have to purchase, it was quality of life, but also necessary, was a trailer tongue jack. Got it at Harbor Freight, 30 bucks, welded it on. A grinder and paint make me the welder I ain't, because these welds are terrible, but they hold very well. I have to grind them out and redo them, and I have to figure out, I'm no welder, but I want to learn. I actually have a plasma cutter over there that I also want to learn to use. So it's going to be a perfect project to really hone in my welding skills that are currently non-existent. And with all that, I believe that really covers mostly everything of what went into building this. It was a crazy fever dream of 12 days. All I did besides work my day job was spend time here in the garage, busting my butt every night just to get this done, because I already spent the money. And the thing is, if I wasn't going to finish this, we weren't going, because I already spent the money on all the materials to build this instead of spending it on a hotel or Airbnb. And I'm really happy, and I'm really glad to say it worked out. I was able to successfully build this camper for my wife and I. And I mean, I'll show you some pictures right now, but we had a great time. This thing went to Grand Junction, Colorado National Monument. It went to Arches National Park, which I'm so grateful that I was able to be there within 2 weeks of being there for my Moab trip. And it made its way to Arizona, to Tonto National Forest, where we finally learned what javelinas are. That was fun. Yeah, scared the hell out of us. So give me a second. I got to get this thing turned around so I could show you the door and show you the inside of this camper. And now this all brings us to the door in the rear and then the inside of the camper, which isn't finished by any means. The whole purpose of this build, of getting it done in 12 days, was to make it roadworthy and camping worthy. I do plan on doing lots more to this throughout the year. But regarding the door, I was debating first whether I wanted a door on either the driver's side or the passenger side. If I did that, it would unfortunately have to have been smaller than I really wanted it to be. Because another thing that I needed this camper to be was to be capable of packing gear in it for the camping trip. And if you have a small door like this wide, you're going to be limited to what you can kind of fit into the camper to pack and take with you. So I opted for a full rear swing out door, just like this. And it was a great decision. Design wise, functionality wise, This made it super easy for both my wife and I to not only get in and out of the camper during our trip, but also pack it and unload it every time we move to a new campsite or just we're packing for the trip in general. Now, the door itself, I'll swing it open again here to show you, is actually made out of 2x4s around the entire perimeter of the door. It's filled with foam insulation board for the same reasons that we're using it on the walls and on the roof. It's lightweight. It keeps the door light, easy to swing out, and also insulates the entire inside. Obviously, we have a PMF layer on the outside here. I have a household door handle, which only came loose once. I might change that in the future, but I tightened it up and it hasn't gotten loose since. So we'll keep that in mind. Got a nice padlock up here to fully secure it as well. So we have a lock on our door handle here and a padlock with a latch up on top as well. And its hinges are actually household door hinges. This is definitely the weakest point of this camper, honestly, that's a great thing that this is the weakest point. These screws kind of came loose from a lot of the dirt roads and washboard roads that I took this camper on. And the immediate solution is, instead of using 1.5-inch screws, use 3-4-inch screws that are going to go all the way to here instead of just here. And I did that. And now it's very, very solid compared to what it was, but I still might want to change my hinge situation in the future. But for now, it works. It really does. Like I said, 2,000 miles, and this thing is just kicking. Now, for the moment I know you've probably all been waiting for. It's the inside of our camper. And now, I know it might not look like much, but honestly, let me show you. My 6-foot entire self. Oh, and I still have room to spare. Yeah, we were able to very comfortably sleep in here and exist, especially when sunset was around 5:30 at that time when we were on our trip, and the temperatures dropped from 30 degrees to 20 instantly. Being able to come in here, we had our camping toilet right in the front here, so we didn't have to go outside in the middle of the night, just right there. We had our Anchor power station right here, which wires from the diesel heater came right through the window to power it. That diesel heater drew very little power. I think only 7 watts, which is great. And then it was able to power. We had a little screen here. We were able to hang out and watch movies in here. And with the diesel heater pumping through the window, we stayed extremely warm and extremely comfortable, both temperature-wise and on this really, really plush memory foam mattress. As I mentioned before, a complete upgrade from tent camping for me. That's the only camping I've ever done besides when I was a kid and we had a camper for a very short while, a pop-up camper. As you could see, this is extremely, extremely temporary. I simply didn't want just pink foam to be the interior that we looked at the entire camping trip. So I picked up these really cheap burnt orange bed sheets, kind of to match the outside in a way, and just used a staple gun and stapled them around into the foam and the wood cross supports. You actually can see, I think you can, this cross beam here. There's one there. I got one right up here and one there. The staples did kind of fall out, as you can imagine. They don't really hold in the foam too well. So we did have some staples fall on us, and I just had to push it back up in place during the trip. But it wasn't a big issue at all. I do plan on doing something, maybe vinyl paneling, something along those lines, also for the floor as well. It's still just the exposed plywood as of right now. As you could see with the window, you could see what I was talking about. We have the metal, what I'm considering, with these self-tapping hex head metal screws that go through the square tubing and into the window frame. It is extremely sturdy, and we're able to open and close our window without any issue whatsoever. It fully opens and fully closes, just like that. And now, I mentioned the certificate of origin in the beginning of this video. The last thing about this whole camper build, the only real issue I came across, to make a long story short, in the state of Colorado, when you get a kit trailer from Harbor Freight and you build it in your garage, in your driveway, you need to get a certified VIN inspection by the Colorado State Patrol before it is deemed legal to get a license plate on it for you to register it. And I didn't know this. So as you could imagine, I was surprised and suddenly taken aback when I saw the appointments for the Colorado State Patrol were 6 weeks out at that time. There was no way, and there wasn't any way, to get a certified VIN inspection to be able to get plates on this camper prior to going on our trip. So long story short, I found out you're able to go to the DMV and get 60-day temps for a kit trailer. So for anyone who lives in the state of Colorado who's looking to do this, please keep that in mind and take advantage of that, because that means you'll be able to use your trailer right away, but within that 60-day period, you should have booked and then attended your certified VIN inspection in order to fully register your trailer or your camper. So yeah, this is the camper. It took me 12 days to build, $2,000 in total for the materials of the camper itself. That's the trailer and everything you see in this shot. Window, all of that, about $2,000. I was looking into buying a teardrop camper or even a bare bones trailer, a 5x10 trailer. I couldn't find anything new or used under $5,000, and that's for a bare bones trailer, a transportation trailer. If you're looking at built out teardrop campers, the low end is like 10, 11 grand. And if I couldn't justify a $2,000 hotel bill, I obviously wasn't going to justify $11,000 on a camper. So I think all in all, I'm very happy with my decision to build this. It was a great experience building it. It was stressful. It was crazy. This was the biggest project I've probably ever done. And it proved to myself that I could do it. I know I'm handy. I know I'm capable. But like I said, this is the biggest thing I've ever done from scratch. And it worked. This thing was on the highway for 2,000 miles. It went to Grand Junction, it went to Moab, it went to Arizona, and drove all the way through New Mexico, back home to Colorado. It was money well spent, time well spent. I really don't know what else to say. If you have any questions, please leave a comment down below. I'll be happy to get to any questions you have or any comments that you have regarding my build. If you liked it, please like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. And I've been having such a great time with this channel, making content. It's fun. It's really fun for me. And it motivates me to do things that I might put off or might have said, why bother? No, it motivates me to do cool things, make cool stuff, and go on cool trails and cool trips. So once again, thank you guys very much for watching. closing on me, isn't it? See you later.